My sister and I were transported to a frigid orc world together. Male orcs knelt before us one after another, begging for courtship. Females are extremely rare here, making polyandry the norm. My sister chose 2 werewolf partners, swearing eternal devotion to them. Little did she know both husbands were obsessed with mating, taking turns forcing her into endless reproduction, utterly stripping her of basic human rights. Yet I chose this seemingly ferocious tiger, who after marriage quietly spoiled me rotten. My tiger beast husband clawed his way to become the undisputed king of beasts. During the coronation, my jealousy-maddened sister shoved me into the sacred flames, burning me alive. When I opened my eyes again, both my sister and I had been reborn on the day of the maid selection. She rushed ahead of me to choose the tiger shifter, looking down at me with contempt. Sister, this lifetime, it's my turn to be queen. I chuckled and rejected all the Beastman's courtship offers, turned and walked toward the beehive at the forest edge. Why settle for being a queen when you've been reborn? This lifetime, I'll be the empress. Please choose your ideal husband from among us. When I opened my eyes again, men of all kinds knelt before me, each gazed at my sister and me with desperate longing, coveting everything about us. The biting wind cut through me, leaving my entire body trembling with cold. I knew these men would prostrate themselves at our feet in an instant, willing to do anything to warm us. My sister has always been vivacious and outgoing, living life to the fullest even in modern times. In our past life, she immediately grabbed 2 men with wolf ears and whispered excitedly in my ear, "Wolves make the most loyal partners, werewolf twins made for life, one true love forever." I could sleep with the whole world, yet my husbands would love only me. She fantasized about the blissful married life she'd have with the twins, where every day would feel like paradise. My sister then pointed at another burly, muscular cat-eared man and said to me, "Look how fierce he is. That grumpy face means he must be amazing in bed. You've got to pick him." The man she pointed out looked downright plain compared to her werewolf twins. He was tall and burly, standing a full head taller than me. I didn't argue with her, ever since I learned her true identity. I've never argued with her. What she said was indeed correct. As it turned out, this fierce man truly lived up to being a tiger beastman. He rightfully claimed his place as the beast king and spoiled me rotten. Though tiger beastmen are the most formidable among their kind, I alone became his cherished and only queen, while my sister suffered at the hands of twin wolf beastmen, reduced to a breeding machine. I rose to become the second most powerful queen in the realm. My younger sister glared at me with envious eyes as I stood regally in my exquisite gown, radiant beyond compare. "Sister, isn't the man I chose for you exceptionally powerful?" Yet my sister had guessed everything correctly. Little did she know, the tiger beastman harbored a fatal flaw. This time, without a moment's hesitation, the younger sister rushed forward and took the tiger beastman's hand. "I choose you to be my mate." The towering, stoic tiger beastman's eyes lit up at her words. Immediately crushing her in a fierce embrace, he clung to her as if trying to merge their bodies, roaring ecstatically at the sky. The other males cowered and trembled under the tiger's roar. Not a soul dared to utter a word. My gaze swept over the remaining men. My sister nudged me with her elbow, directing my attention to the werewolf twins. "Go ahead and pick them then. Werewolves are loyal creatures. You'd absolutely love that, sis." I know her game. She's dead set on making me suffer the same misery she endured in her past life. She married that tiger beastman herself, dreaming of becoming the Beast King Queen. Little did she expect, I just shook my head and rejected my sister's suggestion. I walked toward the forest's edge and stepped into the circle of men. "I choose them." My sister eyed my selections, handsome enough, but their lean frames stood no chance against tiger beastmen. The tiny antennae on their heads revealed their true nature. She scoffed dismissively, "So many men, you'll regret this, sister. My choice is the bee people. In this lifetime, I shall be the queen of the hive." After choosing our mates, we each followed our selected husbands back to their territories. This frozen world remains blanketed in ice and snow year-round. Every orc's primary objectives are survival in the extreme cold and continuing their bloodline. When my sister first returned with the twin werewolves, she initially adapted well to their ways. Little did she expect the werewolves' reproductive urges to be so perverse and insatiable. They forbade her from seeking other male partners. They confined her naked in their den, forcing the sister into endless mating and repeated pregnancies. The sister tried fighting them, cursing them, and even attempted escape. Werewolves were already low status among beast folk. Gaining my sister's affection was a rare stroke of luck. I'd rather die than let her go. She was condemned to that sunless cavern, reduced to nothing but a breeding vessel. The only daylight she ever saw was on the day the tiger beastman I married ascended the throne. Her hair was disheveled, her face drained of color, with nothing but a tattered rag draped over her body. Her breasts sagged from constant nursing. Her belly, stretched by repeated pregnancies, was covered in stretch marks. Cradling a furry wolf cub in her arms, she was visibly pregnant yet again, radiant in the finest attire orcs could craft. I stood resplendent, I nodded, consumed by hatred. She seized the coronation's climax to hurl me into the raging sacred flames before the entire assembly. The fire devoured my visage in an instant. As I screamed in agony, she threw back her head with triumphant laughter. Lynn, you owe me for life. You don't deserve to have it better than me, ever. Cynthia was absolutely right. My biological mother and my sister's mother were once best friends, so close they got married and had children at the same time. The only difference, my mom married a gambler, while hers married into wealth. Out of jealousy, my mother secretly switched me with her own daughter, and I lived as the pampered heiress for 18 long years. After my mother's death, Cynthia ended up in an orphanage, enduring relentless bullying until a car accident finally restored her to her rightful place. Lynn, you stole my life. On my first day back home, she slapped me hard across the face. I didn't argue back. I did steal her life, plain and simple. To get even, she stole my boyfriend, plagiarized my thesis, snatched my internship, let it go. Cynthia's suffered enough all these years. You're the older sister, blood related or not. You should give way. My parents who raised me for 18 years all advised me this way. I gave in, knowing my biological mother had wronged me, yet I still enjoyed 18 carefree years. I never competed with Cynthia for anything she wanted. In the end, I gave her my very life in our past existence. Now I owe her nothing. After choosing her mate, Cynthia immediately nestled into the Tiger Beastman's muscular embrace. The Tiger Beastman's arms were as thick as her thighs, cradling her protectively like a child. He draped his cloak over her, shielding her from the prying eyes of other males. Despite his towering frame, the possessive dominance in his gesture clearly thrilled Cynthia. She giggled incessantly, unfazed even by the Tiger Beastman's pungent musk. Darling, you're being too rough with me. The other orcs burned with envy, but knew they stood no chance against the tiger. To gain the female's attention, they could only grovel at the tiger's feet, waiting for scraps whenever he deigned to share. The males lingered reluctantly, their gazes fixed on Cynthia from afar, hoping to catch even the faintest flicker of her attention. Cynthia's eyes gleamed with triumph as she watched the males drool with unfulfilled desire. Too intimidated to cross the line, Cynthia adored the hungry gazes of men, turning to me with a smirk. Sis, those scrawny men you picked might wipe out our whole bloodline soon. Don't say I didn't warn you, unlike my husband. One look and you know he's built different. As she spoke, she reached out and stroked the Tiger Beastman's powerful arm muscles. The Tiger Beastman couldn't take it anymore, throwing his head back with another thunderous roar. His hands grew bolder, roaming over her body with unrestrained caresses. Seeing I didn't respond, she remained lost in her joy, playfully poking the Tiger Beastman in high spirits. Honey, I'm tired. The moment Cynthia cooed those words, the Tiger Beastman immediately scooped her up and dashed back to their den. A group of other male beastmen trailed far behind them. Cynthia didn't notice, even though the male bee-man I chose appears to be just a lean-muscled man. Other beastmen wouldn't dare glance my way, even during their rutting season, because they all know one truth, too. In a bee's social hierarchy, the queen reigns supreme. As the bee-man's mate, they'd defend my will and dignity with their dying breath. I'm not just their mate, I'm their sovereign. And yet, little did Cynthia know that stepping into the tiger's den meant surrendering all control. Being the queen of tiger shifters was far more demanding than she'd ever imagined. The beefolk who courted me also had a leader, the tallest man among them, with jet black hair and eyes. His face was coldly handsome, though not as brawny as the Tiger Beastman. He still towered over me by a full head. The man remained tight-lipped and reserved, but the subtle twitching of the tiny antennae on his head betrayed his nervousness. The hive was actually a massive cave nestled between mountains and water, its winding corridors connecting chamber after chamber like a labyrinth. The man cradled me gently in his arms, careful not to let me catch a chill. Others prepared bedding and clothes for me, tenderly rubbing my frostbitten hands and feet from the snow. This was far more considerate than my past life, when that Tiger Beastman simply tossed me onto a stone bed. Surprisingly, in this primitive place, I actually experienced the rare feeling of being pampered and waited upon. From start to finish, they coordinated seamlessly without uttering a word. Just a subtle twitch of their antennae was all it took, until I broke the silence. I'm Lynn. What are your names? Kale. The man holding me nodded in response. I'm the drone leader. These two are my subordinates. They don't have names. Oh. I feigned nonchalance though my heart was pounding. Are you three the only males in the colony? You don't expect me to handle all these men alone, do you? No. There are other drones and worker bees in the hive. We kept them out to avoid disturbing you. This is getting out of hand. Just how many husbands did I marry? Kale gently laid me on the grand bed at the heart of the honeycomb, then brought me a bowl of crystal clear liquid. This is honey. It'll replenish your energy. I took a sip, sweet yet tangy, with the creamy texture of a milkshake, the delightful taste did wonders to soothe my shock about the whole one queen, multiple mates situation. It suddenly hit me, I'd tasted this very honey in my past life. Back then, living with the tiger beast folk meant surviving on raw berries and half-cooked, gamey meat, but whenever I fell gravely ill, the tiger Beastman would miraculously procure this golden liquid for me. He called it the divine elixir. Just drink it to prolong life and cure diseases. Who would have thought the miracle cure was actually honey? This is like striking gold. The honey in my mouth suddenly tasted so divine it brought tears to my eyes. But this extreme cold is simply unbearable. Shivering uncontrollably, I blurted out random words. With this frozen wasteland outside and not a single flower in sight, how do you even produce honey? Kale felt my ice-cold hands and feet, clearly surprised by my fragility, frowning. If you're feeling cold, shall I take you to the sacred hive for warmth? That's where we all produce our honey. Their so-called sacred hive turned out to be just a heated stone. Around this warm stone, flowers bloom perpetually, and hot water is always available. The temperature was so perfectly cozy that my toes curled in delight. The men standing nearby watched as my body gradually relaxed in the hot water, their throats tightening with barely restrained desire, their gazes burned with hunger. Yet none dared approach to defile me, until I softly whispered, "Kale." The tall man shuddered at the sound of my voice. "You don't have to hold back anymore." Even in my past life, I knew the orc males here suffered terribly during their mating season. Hearing my consent, Kale finally looked up and met my gaze for the first time. The towering man before me had eyes brimming with bloodlust and ferocity, as if he'd emerged from the depths of darkness and depravity. Yet his red-rimmed eyes betrayed a vulnerability that shattered all pretense, brimming with torment, tenderness, and raw desire. Though his body trembled with barely restrained need, his touch remained impossibly gentle. "My queen." With a sigh, he knelt at my feet, pressing reverent kisses to my alabaster toes. His lips traced a slow, burning path up my leg, yet Kale's expression remained devoutly reverent. He was no stranger to women, never had a female left him so utterly spellbound. With my porcelain skin, delicate frame, and honeyed fragrance, I outshone every blossom in allure. The vacant hive eternally awaits its queen. His breath came hot against my skin as antennae traced featherlight patterns. I melted into a puddle of desire. In my past life, every night with that tiger beastman was pure torture. My sister was right, the tiger beastman was strong, but only in solo combat. In bed, completely useless, brutish and arrogant by nature, yet sexually dysfunctional, completely incapable of performing in that department. As the king of beasts, his inflated ego turned this into our twisted little secret. Just like eunuchs, tiger beastmen have their own psychological issues. When he couldn't satisfy me physically, he made sure to compensate with pain. The tiger beastman, revered by all as the king of beasts, secretly relished my agonized screams and whimpers. In public, he doted on me like royalty. Every female envied my privileged position, but behind closed doors, beneath my long-sleeved gowns, lay a tapestry of scars, burns, cuts, lash marks. Just thinking about doing that makes me tremble with visceral fear. Kale clearly sensed my tension, his body stiffening slightly as he pressed a gentle kiss to my forehead. "Don't be afraid, it won't hurt." I don't believe it. The trauma from my past life still haunts me terribly. The honey from our clan can help you relax. What kind of nonsense honey could possibly be relaxing? Kale poured an entire bottle of honey into the bathtub. As the steam rose, I felt warm all over, slightly tingly, and overwhelmingly hot. Who would have thought? Kale seems like such a proper guy, yet he's shockingly skilled. With reddened eyes, he restrained his own urges while tirelessly pleasuring me. I'd crown him the gold medalist in gentlemanly virtues. Pleasure washed over my senses like tidal waves. Even after everything was done, he'd still hold my dizzy self gently, kiss away my tears, and whisper in my ear, "Shoo, it's all right now, Lynn, I'm here. Don't be afraid." Who is it that just called me your majesty with such a straight face? Now suddenly his gaze burns as he casually uses my pet name. When I opened my eyes again, it was already dark. I lay in the honeycomb, aching all over. Kale held me in a possessive embrace. The moment I opened my eyes, he woke. My face burned crimson, yet he remained silent, just gently kneading my sore muscles with his hands. The whole experience, how should I put it, not only did it erase the shadows of my past life, but it left me with change to spare, except, the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, feeling certain revived parts of him against me. My legs turned to jelly involuntarily. Good news, Kale's got skills. Bad news, from what little I know, doesn't the queen bee have to mate with every male in the hive? After another round of bliss, Kale caught wind of my concern, a glint flashing in those dark eyes. "Don't worry, after consuming honey and mating with the first drone, the queen bee will naturally lay fertile eggs each month. These eggs alone can ensure the hive's continued existence. So the decision of how many drones to mate with rests entirely in my hands. I could simply lay eggs. Or choose to mate with different drones night after night. Lynn, care to try some of my other subordinates? At this point, Kale averted his gaze, his voice soft and faint like a drop of water dissolving into a pond. No need, no need, having you here is enough. Hearing this, his antennae quivered slightly. He glanced at me before turning to pour me a glass of honey water. The corners of his lips curled uncontrollably, his eyes alight with wild delight. All right, Kale was right. The males erupted in cheers after the first ovulation cycle. From then on, the men's gazes held not lust, but fervent devotion, as if I were their sole salvation. I truly brought them the hope of survival and the gift of procreation. Sipping honey, I watched the males bustling around me. Some brought flowers, others gathered fruits, and those who heard I craved meat, though they themselves abstained, went out of their way to hunt and prepare various delicacies for me. The hive buzzed with unprecedented excitement. While they were celebrating, I was secretly plotting something else. I remember in my past life, this hive was soon attacked by the cunning and vicious serpent clan. With insufficient numbers, the bee folk's combat capabilities were severely weakened. The hive was overrun by the serpent clan, and our people were slaughtered to the last. It was precisely the demise of the bee folk that allowed the tigerkin to effortlessly ascend as the undisputed king of beasts. But now that I'm here, I'll be damned if I let history repeat itself with the bee folk's extinction. I was still racking my brains on how to weather this crisis. To my surprise, within days an unwelcome visitor came knocking at my door uninvited. My husband from a past life, a tiger beastman. He didn't come alone, emerging from the endless snow. His entire head was dusted white. Clutched within his heavy cloak was a barely breathing female. Cynthia, is that really you? Please, I beg you, save my wife. Cynthia was burning with fever, her face flushed and her mind delirious. Despite the bitter winter cold, her body was scorching to the touch. As the cloak was drawn back, her pale skin revealed countless wounds. Bruises covered her from neck to chest. Kale averted his gaze, his voice trembling with shock. How did this happen? Females were rare in this world. It was unthinkable that the mighty tigerkin would let their own mates suffer such injuries. The tiger beastman averted his gaze guiltily, sweat beading on his forehead as he stammered. My wife has quite the temper. Kale still couldn't comprehend, but I understood immediately. I've mastered patience. In my past life when encountering tiger beastmen, I learned to stroke their fur the right way to avoid trouble. Seeing my compliance, they'd show some restraint. Cynthia's always had a terrible temper. She acts like the world owes her everything, always has to win. That attitude mixed with tiger beastmen, pure gasoline on fire. Cynthia's eyes fluttered open, recognizing me before she suddenly grabbed my arm, her gaze brimming with hurt. It hurts so much. Did you know all along? Her words came between sobs as tears welled up, choking on her own breath when she tried to speak again. The tiger beastman's eyes flashed with panic as he swiftly wrapped Cynthia in his cloak and clamped a hand over her mouth, terrified we'd steal his bride. Cynthia's nails remained dug deep into my flesh like talons. Kale's eyes darkened with displeasure at the sight. Stepping forward to pry open Cynthia's delicate porcelain hands, I could see him straining with such force that his knuckles turned white, as if the figure before him wasn't the coveted female everyone dreamed of, but rather his mortal enemy. The tiger beastman gritted his teeth and threw dignity aside, dropping to his knees. Please, give me the honey. If you just give me the honey, I know I can save my wife. Kale paid no heed to his words, simply taking my hand before pressing a honey-coated kiss onto the red mark Cynthia had clawed into my skin. The tiger beastman, seeing Kale's complete indifference, turned to me instead and began kowtowing violently. Please save her, she's your sister. His forehead struck the ground with hollow thuds while Cynthia trembled uncontrollably in his arms. The tiger beastman profusely thanked me for the honey, but the look Cynthia gave me from his arms was filled with utter despair and fury. She looked ready to skin me alive. You think a mere jar of honey can heal such wounds? Kale, do we have enough honey? Kale finally exhaled in relief when he saw the marks on my hands fading. There aren't many left, even with heating stones. The flowers can't produce enough nectar in this extreme cold. He was right. The sacred land had limited flower varieties. For generations, the beekin relied on these blooms to produce different honeys, some aphrodisiac, others for daily consumption or wound healing. With dwindling numbers, the beefolk haven't ventured out to seek new flowers in ages. Our honey reserves were nearly depleted. Counting the days, I realized we had little time before the serpent clan's invasion. Fortunately, they had me, the new hive queen. When I said I was leaving the hive, Kale didn't waste a single word, just started packing immediately. In my past life, that tiger beastman kept me caged in his den, his plaything by day. Only during my coronation did I taste freedom. It all felt like another lifetime. I asked cautiously, Kale, aren't you afraid I'll run away? Kale lowered his head to pack for the journey, confusion in his eyes. Wherever you go, we'll follow. You wouldn't keep me confined in the hive forever just to protect me, would you? As long as we draw breath, our queen shall come to no harm. Now it wasn't just Kale making solemn vows, the other males behind him were all pounding their chests in earnest pledge. Rest assured, my queen, we will protect you with our lives. What kind of male can't even protect his own mate? Only cowards would keep their women locked up at home all day. I lowered my head with a faint smile. Liking is the joy of receiving, while love is the peace of giving. I knew I'd made the right choice in this lifetime. Kale, do you know what horticulture means? For the first time, confusion flickered in Kale's typically sharp and perceptive gaze. As for me, I studied horticulture in my past life. The Zhou family heiress was raised studying piano, dance, art appreciation, and gardening. Who would have thought the most useful knowledge I've accumulated since childhood would be horticulture? The study of flower cultivation, propagation, bloom regulation, and applications, how to locate wildflowers at their peak season, how to extend floral blooming periods through light and temperature control. When I miraculously made a flower that blooms only once a year blossom again, I swear I saw genuine awe-flicker in Kale's usually playful eyes for the first time. The twilight glow bled through the pristine white, and beneath fractured ice, the river shimmered like scattered gold. He stared at me, utterly transfixed. Kale, he only seemed to truly see me when I called his name, his gaze suddenly intense and shameless. Lynn, I want you, now. Do beastmen always wear their hearts on their sleeves? Must love always demand immediate action? It made me blush to the tips of my ears. Under my direction, the hive produced multifloral honey for the first time, with effects several times more potent than before. Some varieties beautify, others nurture larvae, while certain types even provide cold resistance. Plants that typically bloom just once a year miraculously maintained continuous blossoms for an entire month. Miracle after miracle compelled these towering men to kneel before me once more. Their eyes brimmed with tears. In this moment, I was no longer just the female who quickened their pulse, nor merely their queen bee bearing the promise of progeny. This time, I truly became their sovereign, their deity. Their eyes held fascination, adoration, and above all, the blazing reverence of subjects gazing upon their queen. This bitter winter in the hive passed more comfortably than previous years, until the tiger Beastman came knocking again, saying Cynthia was pregnant and begging us for more honey. When we saw Cynthia again, she hurled a bowl that smacked the tiger Beastman's head. You useless thing, what took you so long? Don't you want this child anymore? The tiger Beastman didn't get angry, just rubbed the back of his neck sheepishly before leaving. When Cynthia saw me again, she hurried over to pull me down beside her, showing off her extravagant gown. Sis, ever since I got pregnant, he's stopped hitting me completely. Now he treats me like a queen, gives me nothing but the best. Every single night, he won't fall asleep without giving me a goodnight kiss. Jealous much? What's there to be jealous about? Jealous that her man doesn't hit her. I let out a flat "oh." Whatever makes you happy. Clearly the tiger Beastman dotes on her when sane, just lacks the means, malnourished for months and forced to eat unappetizing meat. Cynthia looked ghastly pale, her body emitting a peculiar stench, not to mention the web of stretch marks crawling from her chest down to her swollen belly. Kale looked at her like she was garbage, his face twisted in disgust as he shielded me, desperate to drag me out of the cave. Meanwhile, I feasted on honey daily, dining on meals meticulously prepared by the entire hive, spared from the agonies of carrying offspring. Just once a month is enough to breed a thriving colony, making me glow from the inside out. Cynthia had imagined I was miserable, but seeing how protective my husband was, and catching those telltale love bites on my inner thigh, shattered her illusion. No amount of her bragging could keep up the facade. Raw envy flashed in Cynthia's eyes. Just sleeping with men won't get you pregnant. You're definitely not carrying a child, are you? In this world, only fertile females have value. I gave a faint smile, set down the honey, and left. Having lived a past life, I know all too well that tiger beastmen are sexual deviants. Even if Cynthia gets pregnant, that bastard would never change his ways. To tiger beastmen, females are nothing but breeding tools. Their sole purpose is to serve as male appendages. Cynthia truly believes she's enduring hardships for future glory, waiting for the day her man becomes Beast King so she can trample me underfoot and gloat in my face. Pity she miscalculated. For all her scheming, she still got it wrong. With me in the hive, that tiger will never become the Beast King. That's what I used to believe, until one patrol when our drone squad ran into serpent folk ahead of schedule. Kale got poisoned by serpent venom, the legendary venom with no known antidote. A single bite spells certain death. HSSS. Even a tough guy like Kale couldn't suppress a pained groan as nerve agony racked his body. A long, lethal gash ran across his entire abdominal muscles. Blood gushed out relentlessly, staining my vision crimson. Don't cry, I'm fine. Kale gently wiped away my tears with his fingertips. Only then did I realize tears were streaming down my face. Kale slipped into a prolonged coma. The honey in the hive was barely enough to keep him alive. Your Majesty, what shall we do? This wound, it's beyond our healing powers. 5. The worker bees have set out to find new blooms, but fresh flowers aren't that easy to come by. The worker bees simply aren't up to the task. I made the resolute decision to leave the hive and seek out new blossoms. The drone's pupils trembled violently. They couldn't believe their eyes. A precious queen bee would actually abandon the hive for a male, venturing into the frozen wilderness. Without Kale by my side, the icy tundra felt even colder than usual, shivering from head to toe. I scaled the cliff face until finally discovering cluster after cluster of new floral specimens in the snow-blanketed wasteland, finally felt a wave of relief. Just stuffed the freshly picked flowers into my bag when an unexpected voice came from above. Sis. What are you doing here? Cynthia's voice bubbled with such excitement it sent shivers down my spine. Seeing no one behind me, her face lit up with delight. Your man's not with you. As I remained silent, her grin grew wider. Back in the original world, Cynthia had it out for me ever since she returned to her position. That's the smile she only wears when she's trampling me underfoot. She wore that same smirk when sleeping with my boyfriend, when turning my friends against me. When stealing my thesis. Sis, you keep dating these worthless men, befriending trash, writing garbage papers. I'm doing you a favor, you should thank me. Sis, since arriving in the orc world, this was the first time I'd seen such a smile on her face. When the snake man came to me, claiming he'd killed your man and could slay the tiger orc too, promising to make me his wife, I didn't believe him. The fire of desire burned fiercely in her eyes, twisting into a grotesque grin. Now, I believe. I thought to myself, this is bad. Sure enough, she swung her leg and kicked me hard. My frustrated hands throbbed with pain. Sis, no matter how many times we start over, I'll always be the winner. You deserve to die. Another kick. Just as I was about to let go and plunge off the cliff, several drones burst into view, shouting, "My queen!" Cynthia snorted coldly. "TCH, lucky you." 2 months later, the tiger Beastman's corpse lay rotting in the wilderness, heart and lungs torn out. Drenched in congealed blood, lying beside him in the wasteland were several newly formed embryos. The serpent folk made a grand spectacle of slaying the tiger Beastman and his cubs, seizing his territory while assimilating his remaining followers. With no known antidote to their venom, none dared oppose them. That day, they marched upon the hive with torches held high, the tiger Beastman's mutilated corpse impaled upon wooden pikes. The one-eyed serpent leader looked at me standing alone before him and burst into laughter. Your man took one of my eyes, so I took his life. Everyone knows my venom is peerless. Kneel before me now, and I might spare your wretched lives. I've always been merciful to females. He disgustingly thrust his hips forward. Cynthia lounged bonelessly in the serpent chieftain's arms, looking down with disdain. Sis, I told you. The one who'll have the last laugh is always me. I didn't respond. Merely flicked my wrist. Countless worker bees emerged from the surrounding forest, lying in ambush. How did they multiply so rapidly? The serpent man's face darkened as he seized Cynthia by the throat. Didn't you claim your sister never reproduced even once? With the original number of bee people, taking them down would have been a piece of cake, but how did their forces grow so large? How should I know? Cynthia's gaze darted around uneasily. Worker bees are genderless. Just a few drops of honey can nurture the eggs I lay into adulthood. After all these months, the hive has changed beyond recognition, both in size and population. Snake venom isn't an infinite resource. Even poisoning all the worker bees wouldn't be that simple. The serpent warrior had fought for so long that even the mightiest tiger Beastman stood no chance against him. Mere worker bees were beneath his notice. What's there to fear from some bee men? A female is your queen. You fools deserve to die. A female shall never be king. The serpent man snarled and gave the order, attack. Though his beastman horde was disorderly, their fangs and claws made them formidable fighters, quickly gained the upper hand. The serpent man wore a confident smirk, but his expression twisted in shock when he saw the towering figure behind me, fists clenching involuntarily. Impossible. Your man, wasn't he already dead? 6, Cynthia screamed. Kale rested his hand lightly on my shoulder in a protective gesture. His complexion looked poor from being unconscious for so long, but now that the antidote honey has been developed, snake venom is nothing to fear. Just a single sip will neutralize it. Kale's very presence serves as the most convincing proof. The serpent folk leader seethed with rage as his minions faltered in retreat. Unlike other orcs who had to shout commands verbally, the bee folk could flawlessly receive Kale's tactical orders simply by twitching their antennae. The difference in command transmission efficiency was like night and day. In no time, the bee folk gained the upper hand. The serpent man was pinned violently to the ground by Kale's warrior drones, spurting venom in desperation. Without flinching, the bee folk lopped off the serpent's head with a single strike. Worker bees swiftly moved in, applying honey to the wound. The bee-man immediately rose to his feet again, seeing the honey's antidote properties. The remaining beastmen lost all will to fight. The bee-man raised the serpent chieftain's severed head high and bellowed, "For Her Majesty the Queen." The surrounding swarm echoed his words in rolling waves. "For Her Majesty." The crowd encircled me in concentric rings, gradually kneeling. The assembly prostrated themselves in reverence. Cynthia stood frozen in place, her face smeared with serpent blood, wailing uncontrollably. Whether she mourned her short-lived, one-eyed husband or her own fate remained unclear. Kale shielded me as we retreated to the hive. The last thing I heard was Cynthia's piercing scream. "What are you doing? I'm a female, the wife of both the tiger chieftain and the serpent leader. Keep your hands to yourselves. Show me some respect. Sister, come see me." This time, I didn't look back. In the end, Cynthia was taken away by some male. Who it was, no one knew. The ground was streaked with bloodstains mingled with other fluids. Whether hers or some male's, no one could tell. Hopefully, this time she'd pick a satisfactory mate from this crowd of males. The bitter winter had finally come to an end. The hive bred thousands of worker bees and developed a new variety of honey, gradually learned to trade honey with other tribes, in exchange for other supplies and food. Kale once asked if I found him boring, and whether I'd prefer other males to serve me for variety. At that moment, I spat out my honey tea with a p sound. Kale's expression was perfectly composed, as if the notion of the queen betting only him was utterly preposterous, yet I shook my head. "No replacements needed. You're more than enough, just as expected." His lips curled upward like a fish hooked on a line. Such a proper man, yet so stubbornly competitive. "Just say the word, Your Majesty, whenever you wish for a change. I shall ensure Her Majesty experiences nothing but perfection." What a tough talker. I took a sip of honey tea, gazing out the window at the lush, sun-drenched spring. I roam freely between heaven and earth, blessed with love and strength, capable of destruction, yet master of protection. I shield my people, and am cherished in return. What could be more wonderful than this? Story 2. My sister is understanding, gentle, and considerate. I worked hard to kill zombies and stockpile supplies, but she gave away the supplies I had barely managed to gather to other residents in the building. I took her by car through a bloody path to the safe base, but she insisted on taking in a dying young man lying by the roadside. I became the squad leader of the defense team, and my sister, hearing that eating a crystal core from a mutant could grant their abilities, persuaded me to give the core to the man she had picked up. After I refused, she persuaded me to take a man on the mission. Unable to resist her pressure, I had to agree. After I was stripped of my crystal core and thrown into a pile of zombies, my sister chose to forgive the man. I was devoured by the zombies, and the man gave the crystal core to my sister. She and the man held a grand wedding in the base. Upon opening my eyes, I found myself back at the beginning of the apocalypse, when I awakened my abilities. When I opened my eyes, my throat felt like it had been scorched by fire. The deliberately hushed voices in the living room made my fingers instinctively dig into my palm, recognizing that familiar shrill voice. "Celine, dear, Auntie knows you're the kindest. Our 3 boys are so hungry they can't even walk. Aunt Livia," I silently sneered. The memory of being pushed into a zombie horde by this family after being seriously injured in my previous life made my stomach churn. I tiptoed to the door and peeked through the crack to see Celine handing over the compressed biscuits I had earned with half my life yesterday to Livia. My sister today had her hair in neat braids, her white dress spotless, and her furrowed brow looked just like that of a saintly mother figure worrying about all beings. "Auntie, don't worry, the supplies my sister has stored are still enough." Celine's voice was sweet enough to drip honey. I pushed the door open abruptly. Celine clearly flinched, but by the time she turned around, her face was already wearing a look of surprise. "Sister, you're awake." Livia's house, her 3 sons playing cards downstairs are so loud the whole building can hear them. I interrupted directly, pulling the biscuits back from Celine's hand. Someone who's too hungry to walk wouldn't be laughing that loudly. Livia's face turned pale instantly. "What do you mean, Livia?" "Literal meaning." I threw the biscuit back into the storage box. "If you want food, let your 3 precious sons come and ask for it themselves." Celine quickly grabbed my arm, her fingertips trembling slightly. In my previous life, I thought Celine's trembling was a sign of fear, but after being reborn, I realized it was her trembling every time her plans fell through. "Sister, with the world in such chaos," Celine's eyes turned red in an instant. "We should help each other." I stared into her watery eyes. It was this expression that had tricked me into giving Elliot the last half bottle of water in my previous life, and that night I almost died of dehydration on my watch. "You're right," I suddenly laughed. "So Celine, being so kind, must be willing to share her portion with Aunt Livia, right?" Celine's eyelashes fluttered violently. Sure enough, she immediately let go of my arm. "But I've already given mine to Grandma Anastasia in 302. Seeing this, Aunt Livia suddenly knelt down. "Livia, Please have mercy on an old woman. I watched her performance coldly. After the scene in my previous life, Celine cried like a pear blossom bathed in rain, and I softened and agreed, only for Livia to turn around and sell the news of our well-stocked supplies to the raiders. Go kneel downstairs. I turned and walked towards the room. Remember to call your 3 filial sons to kneel together. Maybe it will move some succor. The moment the door closed, a crisp sound of dishes hitting the floor came from outside. I leaned against the door and counted to 3, and sure enough, I heard Celine's deliberately raised voice, "Auntie, don't be angry, my sister is feverish and confused." Then came the hushed conspiratorial whispers. I gently turned the door handle and saw Celine whispering into Livia's ear, "Wait until my sister goes to sleep at night, and then have the 3 brothers come to move it directly. She won't say anything since she knows I agreed to it." I silently closed the door, the same lines as in my previous life, even the hypocritical expression remained unchanged. Suddenly, a wave of dizziness hit me. I leaned against the wall, feeling a warm current rushing through my veins. Raising my hand, fine droplets of water suddenly appeared on my palm. This time, I won't make the same mistake. In my previous life, I immediately told Celine about my awakened ability, and 3 months later, it was this secret that led to my spine being cut open and my crystal core being taken. The sound of Celine's footsteps came from outside the door, and I quickly dried my palms. "Sister," she pushed the door open, holding a glass of water. "Have some water." I looked at the carefully designed angle she had chosen, the way she slightly leaned forward just enough to reveal the bruise on her collarbone, a wound she had sustained yesterday when she fell while I was covering her retreat. Now it served as a prop for her performance of sisterly affection. "Put it there." I pointed to the bedside table. Celine didn't leave but sat by the bed, gently stroking my forehead. "Sis, your temperature is so high. Do you feel anything different?" She was probing. I pretended to be confused and blinked. "Just a headache." Oh, she couldn't hide her disappointment, then put on a sweet smile. "Then sister, get some good rest, and I'll go persuade Aunt Livia again." Watching her gently close the door, I picked up the water cup and sniffed it. Sure enough, there was a faint bitter almond smell. In my previous life, this cup of water made me sleep for a whole day, and when I woke up, the storage room was already empty. I directly poured water into the flower pot, and a few minutes later, the pot hose started to turn yellow and wither. Livia's family's shrill laughter and curses came from outside the window. Pretending to be so noble, let's see her beg us on her knees, asterisk. As I stuffed the compressed biscuits into my backpack, Celine burst into the room like a gust of wind, gripping my wrist tightly. "Sister, what are you doing?" Her voice rose an octave, her nails almost digging into my flesh. I slowly pulled my hand away and continued packing antibiotics into my bag. "Isn't the northern base supposed to be the safest?" Celine's face turned pale instantly, her lips trembling like leaves in the wind. But, she suddenly lunged forward and hugged my waist. "How can we leave the elderly and children in the building behind? That's too selfish." I stopped what I was doing and nodded thoughtfully. "You're right." She visibly relaxed, her fingers releasing my hem. I turned and pulled out my credentials from the drawer. "Then you stay and take care of them." Celine's expression froze. I can't let my sister take the risk alone," she said decisively, turning to start stuffing things into her bag. "I'm going with you." I sneered inwardly. Too bad. If she had chosen to stay, I could have seen how her kind neighbors would treat her without my protection. It was already dusk when we finished packing. Celine followed closely behind me. As we passed by Aunt Livia's house, the family was gathered on the porch, gnawing on chicken legs from who knows where. The 3 greasy-faced sons saw us with our luggage and immediately surrounded us. "Oh, are you running for your lives?" The eldest son blocked the stairs, his yellow teeth glistening with grease. "Take us with you." "Huh." I reached for the dagger at my waist, but then Celine suddenly spoke in a trembling voice. "Please, don't. My sister is not well. We're just going." "Shut up," I snapped, cutting off her act. The dagger slid out with a clang. "Either move aside, or I'll make sure you have one less son to bury." Livia screamed and pulled her sons back. As we went downstairs, Celine whispered softly in my ear, "Sister, you'll be cursed for this." I pushed open the unit door without looking back. Cursed? The curse came faster when I helped them in my previous life. The abandoned street smelled of decay. Celine suddenly ran a few steps to hold my arm, her voice sweet and sickly. "Sister, before you leave, did you forget something?" "Like what?" "It's the tin box in your nightstand." Her fingertips lightly traced circles on my arm. "Anyway, we're going to the safe zone." I almost laughed out loud. The tin box contained the gold necklace my mother left behind. In my previous life, she secretly traded it with raiders for a box of chocolates while fleeing for our lives. No, only a week into the zombie outbreak, she was already eyeing it. "I've got it with me." I patted my backpack, pleased to see her eyes light up. "Don't worry. I'll donate it to someone who needs it more. Once we reached the base, Celine abruptly pulled her arm away from mine, then quickly looped it back in as if realizing her mistake. Sister, you're really joking. As we turned the corner, a group of zombies were feasting on some animal. I pulled Celine into a convenience store, observing their twisted movements through the cracked glass window. Suddenly, Celine's breath hit my ear. Sis, don't you think that one in the red looks a bit like Anastasia from 302? I squinted. The zombie indeed wore the red padded jacket that Anastasia often wore, and around her neck was the scarf Celine had kindly given her last week. How pitiful. Celine's voice trembled with fake emotion. If only we had shared more food with her. Yeah, I murmured in agreement. If you hadn't stolen her blood pressure medication to trade for hair clips, maybe she wouldn't have had a stroke and died in the hallway in the middle of the night. Celine's body stiffened instantly. I shouldn't have known about this. In my previous life, it was only 2 months later that Elliot let it slip. Now I could feel her gaze like a knife piercing my cheek, judging whether I was probing her. I pretended to focus on observing the zombie horde, letting her suffer. Eventually, she chose to cover it up with a sob. Sister, how could you think that of me? The zombie horde finally wandered away. We took the opportunity to cross 2 streets and found an SUV that could still start at a gas station. Celine hurried to sit in the passenger seat, but her eyes kept glancing at my backpack. Sister, is the northern base really safe? She asked while using her phone screen as a mirror to reapply her lipstick. Where did you hear the news from? I turned the steering wheel and ran over a zombie that lunged at me. At this time in my previous life, I really didn't know about the northern base, only finding out 3 months later when I met Elliot. But now, as I looked at Celine's meticulously drawn lip line, I suddenly thought of an interesting possibility. Elliot told me, I said nonchalantly. The tires screeched. Celine's lipstick smeared directly onto her cheek, like a streak of blood. Elliot, who is that? I gave her a half-smile glance. This reaction was too interesting. She actually knows Elliot now. In my previous life, she only accidentally met him on our way to the base. If I don't recognize them, it's fine. I continued driving. We'll meet them at the base anyway. Celine suddenly became unusually quiet, her fingers constantly twisting the hem of her skirt. This state continued until we found a temporary place to stay, a small inn with intact windows and doors. After checking all the rooms, I returned to see Celine fiddling with her phone, her back to me. I approached silently and glimpsed a half-written text message on the screen. Elliot. My sister doesn't know how either. What are you looking at? I suddenly spoke up. Celine was so startled that she dropped her phone. She turned around with a sweet smile already on her face. Nothing. Just letting a classmate know I'm safe. I bent down to pick up the phone, but the screen was already off. Which classmate? I'll help you send it. No need. She snatched the phone back, her ears turning red. Sis, you should go take a shower. I'll stay up. I picked up my backpack and walked into the bathroom, turning the faucet to the maximum. In the steam, I stared at the water droplets condensing in my palm. In my previous life, until my death, I thought Celine was a naive and sweet girl deceived by Elliot, but now it seems that the collusion between this pair of scoundrels may have started earlier than I imagined. Celine's deliberately lowered voice came from outside the door. She suddenly said she wanted to go to the northern base. I don't know if she discovered anything. I let the sound of the water cover my cold laugh. It seems this trip to the north will be more interesting than I imagined. Elliot and Celine met in City C. After arriving in City C, I specifically left Celine alone in the car and told her not to wander off, while I went out to look for supplies, in this abandoned city in our previous life. We only stayed for 20 minutes, but this time, I deliberately dragged out the time, turning every shelf into a mess. It should be about enough. I glanced at my wristwatch and decided to head back. I walked back with a half-full bag of supplies, deliberately making heavy footsteps. As I turned the last corner, I indeed saw Celine's small figure struggling to drag a man into the back seat of the car. The man's drooping arm had a scar that I would never mistake for anything else. The scar Elliot left behind from the zombie dog attack. I stood still, quietly watching this scene. Celine was wearing a light blue dress today, and the hem had already been stained black with blood. Her bangs were stuck to her face with sweat, making her look so pitiful. In a daze, I seemed to see my sister from college days, who had a high fever but insisted on letting me go back to take the exam. Sister, Celine suddenly looked up, as if just noticing me, and exclaimed in surprise. She hurriedly let go of Elliot's collar, standing there helplessly. Some water would be good, she suddenly muttered to herself, her voice just loud enough for me to hear. Then, as if suddenly realizing, she ran towards me. Sister, this person is badly injured, we have to save him. I slowly approached, my gaze falling on Elliot's pale face. His eyes were closed, but I knew he was pretending to be unconscious, just like in my previous life, until I turned to get the medical kit. when he would coincidentally wake up. Do you know him? I asked directly. Celine's pupils contracted sharply. How could I? I just felt sorry for him. I stared into her flickering eyes and suddenly felt a wave of dizziness. Was this person, who was full of lies, really the sister who would secretly cook sweet and sour pork ribs for me in the dormitory just because I casually mentioned wanting to eat them? Sis. She twisted her fingers around her skirt hem. Can we take him with us? I threw the supply bag into the trunk. As you wish. On the way, Celine kept wiping Elliot's face with wet wipes. In the rearview mirror, I saw her fingertips linger on his Adam's apple for 2 extra seconds. Sis, I want to wash my face, she suddenly said. It's all dusty, we don't have much water left. But, she bit her lip. Sister, don't you have water-based abilities? The steering wheel almost slipped. I had never told anyone about my abilities in my entire life. What abilities? I heard my voice, frighteningly calm. You live with me. How could you not know if I had abilities? Celine's face turned pale. She played with the wet wipe packaging. I was just guessing. It's not like it's not in the movies. I stared at her red ears. She was lying, but the lie was too clumsy, not like Celine's style. Unless, she wasn't the original Celine. The thought made my fingers cold. Elliot suddenly coughed in the back seat, and Celine immediately rushed over to pat his back. Her movements so practiced it was as if she had rehearsed them countless times. We checked into a motel before nightfall. I deliberately chose a single room, watching as Celine struggled to help Elliot onto the only long sofa. Sis, he's burning up at 39 degrees. Celine knelt by the sofa, her fingers constantly combing through Elliot's sweat-soaked hair. I leaned against the bathroom doorframe, watching coldly. In my previous life, I was moved by this kind of kindness and voluntarily gave up my bed. Now, thinking back, she was also measuring the curve of Elliot's collarbone with her fingertips like this. Use alcohol to wipe the body. I tossed her half a bottle of medical alcohol. I'm going to patrol. Closing the door, I slipped to the window. Through the slats of the blinds, I saw Celine take out her phone and take 3 consecutive shots of Elliot, then start typing quickly. Her expression was one I had never seen before, a mix of calculation and excitement, which was definitely not something my sister would have. The night wind on the rooftop was making my temples ache. If this Celine wasn't the original Celine, then where did the real Celine go? When was she replaced? Was the sister who knitted me a scarf until dawn in college the same person as this Celine wiping sweat for a strange man? I decided to probe one more time, when I returned to the room. Celine was feeding water to Elliot, her movements as skilled as a nurse. Sis, she suddenly looked up. Do you remember when I was hospitalized during my junior year? My heart skipped a beat. I remember, that day you insisted on dropping out to take care of me. Her eyes were moist. Actually, I was pretending, just to see you worry. The toothbrush I was holding snapped in half. Celine had acute appendicitis during her junior year, and the doctor said she would have perforated if she had come half an hour later. She was sweating cold from the pain but still smiled to comfort me not to cry. How could it be fake? Is that so? I slowly spat out the toothpaste foam in my mouth. I forgot, when I lay down on the bed fully clothed, Elliot was pretending to cough. Celine immediately jumped up like a startled rabbit, frantically patting his back. Elliot, no. Sir, are you all right? She panicked and corrected herself, her fingers already familiar with the touch on Elliot's back. I stood with my back to them, hearing Elliot weakly say, I'll take the night watch. That won't do. Celine's voice rose an octave. You're still injured. I counted to 3, and sure enough, I heard her stammering as she turned to me. Sis, maybe we… Okay, I interrupted her decisively. You take the first half of the night, and I'll take the second half. Celine's breathing stopped for a moment. In my previous life, I would have felt sorry for her at times like this and taken over the entire night's watch, but now, I pulled the blanket over my head and heard the faint sound of her nails digging into her palm. Well, all right then, she finally managed to squeeze out a sentence, her voice strained as if forced through clenched teeth. Half asleep, I caught a faint whiff of sweetness. It was Celine's favorite strawberry hand cream. I used to find it too sweet in college, but now the taste makes my nose tingle. Celine used to massage my temples with her fingers carrying the scent when I stayed up late studying. Sis, Celine's soft call suddenly came from beside me, and I pretended to be asleep without responding. Her breath lingered at the back of my neck for a moment before slowly moving away. After an unknown amount of time, the crisp sound of glass shattering woke me up. I opened my eyes abruptly to see Celine sleeping soundly in the chair, while a decaying hand was reaching through the broken door, feeling for the lock. I grabbed the dagger by my pillow and jumped up, just as I heard Celine let out a scream that could wake the dead. More shadows surged from all directions. I stabbed the first zombie that poked its head in with a backhand strike, and black blood splattered onto Celine's white dress. She jumped up like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, letting out a series of screams. "Shut up." I covered her mouth with my hand. "Do you want to attract all the zombies in the street?" She widened her eyes in terror, but her gaze kept darting towards Elliot. The man who had been pretending to be sick was now as agile as a gazelle, having already reached the window. "Go out the window." I grabbed Celine's wrist. "No, I am scared." She clung tightly to the edge of the bed, her nails leaving white marks on the sheet. "It's so high." I let go. "Then stay." Celine's face turned pale instantly. She turned to look at Elliot, tears welling up in her eyes. This gentleman, could you?" Elliot's reaction was more dramatic than I expected. He pushed Celine away with such force that she staggered and hit the wall. "If you want to die, don't drag me with you." He glared at Celine viciously and jumped off the second floor without hesitation. A crisp crack and a paint hail came from outside the window. I looked out and saw Elliot dragging a twisted arm, scrambling to escape, with no sign of being a seriously injured patient. Celine stared blankly in the direction Elliot had disappeared, her lips trembling like leaves in the wind. I reached out to her again. "Last chance." She suddenly slapped my hand away forcefully, and the tears in her eyes evaporated instantly. "Are you satisfied now?" Those words felt like a dull knife stabbing into my chest. Watching her twisted expression, I suddenly realized that perhaps there had never been any becoming strangers. Maybe this Celine, full of resentment, is her most authentic self. "Very satisfied," I heard myself say, then turned and jumped out the window. As I landed, I rolled with the impact and just caught a glimpse of Elliot limping deeper into the alley, upstairs. Celine's scream finally drew the attention of the zombie horde. I hid in the shadows, watching as 3 zombies smashed through the door and charged in. 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds. Just as I was about to rush back, a makeshift rope tied from bedsheets suddenly dropped from the window. Celine slid down neatly, moving with agility that didn't match the delicate sister who couldn't even open a bottle cap. After landing, she cautiously scanned the surroundings, then pulled out a butterfly knife from her boot. It was the one I had given her for her 20th birthday in my previous life, with her initials engraved on the blade. The zombies' roars came from the window. Celine ran in the opposite direction without looking back, and before leaving, she lit a piece of cloth and threw it into the gas station. I watched her quickly disappearing back and suddenly laughed out loud. The fire illuminated half the night sky and also illuminated an obvious fact: this Celine, who could tie knots, play with knives, and make explosions, could not possibly be my sister. Since I separated from Celine, I have been keeping a distance just close enough to follow her. Neither would she find out, nor would I fail to see what she was doing. Sure enough, a few days later, she picked up another seriously injured man. I crouched in the bushes, watching the strange woman use my sister's body to bandage the unconscious man's wounds. Her movements were too skilled, tightening the tourniquet with a snap. Without even flinching, my sister Celine was always terrified of blood, and it used to take her forever to put a band-aid on me. The man suddenly opened his eyes and grabbed Celine's wrist. In the moonlight, I saw his face, sharp as if carved by a knife, with a faint scar on his left eyebrow. I didn't recognize this face, but my intuition told me he was dangerous. "Don't touch me." The man's voice was as cold as ice. Celine seemed not to hear the warning and moved even closer, her chest almost touching the other person. "You have an infection. You need," I said, "get lost." As soon as the word "get lost" was uttered, Celine was thrown out like a rag, her back slamming heavily against the tree trunk. I almost laughed out loud and quickly covered my mouth. The next 3 days were a complete farce. This imposter in my sister's body kept finding new ways to cling to that man, pretending to trip over a stone and fall into his arms, accidentally spilling water on his pants, and even sneaking into his makeshift tent at midnight. It wasn't until that night that I saw her standing naked in front of the man, the moonlight revealing a body that was clearly familiar to me, yet posed in lewd gestures my sister would never make. "I'm cold." Celine's voice was sickly sweet. The man's reaction almost made me clap. He grabbed Celine by the hair and dragged her to the river like a dead dog, throwing her in directly. "One more time." His voice was terrifyingly calm. "And I'll snap your neck." I quietly backed away and accidentally stepped on a twig, snapping it. The man's gaze shot over like an arrow, and I immediately held my breath. Late that night, I was dozing in the branches when a sudden chill came over me. When I opened my eyes, the man was standing below the tree, the moonlight outlining his sharp silhouette with a silver edge. "Have you been following me all this way? Aren't you tired?" He looked up at me, his eyes like he was looking at a pesky fly. I jumped down from the tree and brushed the leaves off my clothes. "Who's following you?" "I'm chasing that imposter." The man squinted. "Isn't she your sister?" "The body is, but not the core." I stared into his eyes. "What about you? Why do you tolerate her following you?" "She saved me," the man said briefly, though it was unnecessary. The distant call of Celine reached him, and the man, later I learned his name was Cyrus, frowned. We part ways tomorrow in Qinghe Town." After saying that, he turned and left, and I, almost against my will, asked, "Where are you going?" "None of your business." I made a face at his back. The next day, as we were approaching Qinghe Town, Celine suddenly went wild and lunged to kiss Cyrus. Cyrus sidestepped, and she fell straight into the mud pit. I was hiding behind a tree, laughing so hard I was shaking, but Cyrus spotted me. "If you follow me again, I'll kill you," he said without looking back. "Who would follow you?" I shouted at his back. "I'm going to the northern base." Cyrus's footsteps paused imperceptibly before he quickly disappeared at the end of the path. Meanwhile, Celine climbed out of the mud pit, gave a venomous glare in the direction where I was hiding, and hurried after him. That night, I spent the night at an abandoned gas station outside of town, and I was startled awake in the middle of the night. When I opened my eyes, I saw Cyrus standing in front of me. "The northern base is very dangerous," he said abruptly, "especially for those with abilities." My heart skipped a beat. "What abilities? Don't play dumb," he sneered. "I saw you control the water by the creek this morning." I inwardly regretted, but my face remained calm. So don't go to your death." Cyrus turned to leave, then paused. "That imposter is heading towards the base. She's not my sister." I couldn't help but emphasize. Cyrus glanced back at me, and that look sent chills down my spine. "She soon will be." This sentence exploded in my mind. By the time I came to my senses, Cyrus was gone, and only a few blackened footprints on the ground proved that he wasn't an illusion. I hugged my knees sitting in the drafty gas station, suddenly missing the real Celine, the little girl who would hold me and say, "Sister, don't be afraid," when I had nightmares. Where is she now? The steel gates of the northern base gleamed coldly in the sunlight, and it took me 3 hours of waiting in line to finally reach the entrance. At that moment, a familiar voice suddenly rang out. "Sister." Celine burst out from the crowd and threw herself at me, crying. She was wearing a faded dress today, her eyes swollen like peaches, looking like a deserted young wife. "How could you leave me?" she sobbed, her voice just loud enough for those around to hear. "That night we agreed to leave together, but when I woke up, you were gone." I coldly watched her performance, and people around had already started pointing and whispering. "Little girl, is this your sister?" A man with a menacing face squeezed over. "Is it her who left you injured alone in the wilderness?" Celine quickly shook her head. "No, it's not like that. Sister, she just, the more she hesitated, the more contemptuous the surrounding people's eyes became. I noticed the man who spoke up had a northern base armband on his arm, exchanging glances with the gatekeeper. "How can someone like her be worthy of coming to the northern base?" The man deliberately raised his voice. "I heard she didn't even care for people in her own neighborhood, sneaking away in the middle of the night." Celine anxiously tugged at the person's sleeve. "Don't say that about my sister. She's just too scared." I almost laughed out loud. "This acting, it's a waste not to be in a theater." "Enough." I reached up to push Celine away, but she fell to the ground like a piece of paper, letting out a cry of pain. The crowd immediately erupted. The gatekeeper walked over and blocked me. "Miss, our base does not welcome people like you who are selfish." Just as I was about to turn and leave, a cold voice came from inside the door. "She's with me." Cyrus appeared at the door, his black combat uniform making his figure look particularly upright. The guard's face immediately changed. "Captain Cyrus, this problem." Cyrus's glance silenced the guard. He grabbed my wrist and strode into the base, only releasing me when we turned into an empty alley. I rubbed my red wrist and heard him say through gritted teeth, "Didn't I tell you not to come? Do we know each other?" I sneered. "What business is it of yours where I go?" Cyrus's eyes were dark and terrifying. "Then don't tell the base you have powers." With that, he turned and left, his black cape flapping behind him. I found a dilapidated house in the slum to stay in, earning my meals by transporting supplies. This suited me perfectly. Staying low-key would help me investigate Celine better. A week later in the evening, as I was carrying a box of canned goods toward the warehouse, I suddenly heard an exaggerated exclamation. "Sister." Celine stood by the roadside, wearing a brand new uniform skirt, surrounded by a few fawning young men. She widened her eyes at the heavy object in my hands, her voice rising an octave. "Why are you doing odd jobs? Don't you have water-based abilities?" The surroundings instantly fell silent. I felt countless gazes shooting towards me like arrows, the sharpest one coming from Cyrus in the shadows not far away. His stare seemed to say, "You're done for." In my previous life, I died not long after arriving at the northern base. Cyrus died even earlier. The rumors about the northern base possibly conducting human experiments in secret were something I pieced together from Cyrus's fragmented words in this life. After my water-based abilities were discovered, just like in my previous life, I became a member of the defense team. I stood in front of the assignment announcement for the northern base defense team, my fingertips unconsciously digging into my palm. My name was clearly written on the announcement. followed by the 4 words water-based ability user, exactly the same as in my previous life. Sister, Celine suddenly appeared from somewhere, warmly linking her arm with mine. Join our team. The captain is really nice. I stared into her eyes. The shape is still the apricot eyes I'm familiar with, but the spirit within is terrifyingly unfamiliar, this transmigrator who has taken over my sister's body. What is she plotting now? No thanks. I walked straight to the registration desk for Cyrus's team. I'll choose here. Celine's smile froze on her face. A man with glasses next to her immediately sneered. Oh, a water-based ability joining the special forces. Could it be? None of your business, I said without looking back, but the rumors spread like wildfire. The next day in the cafeteria, I could always hear suppressed snickers. Did you hear? That new girl? Exactly. Someone saw her coming out of Captain Cyrus' room yesterday. I slammed down my tray. Celine was sitting at the next table, listening to people talk about me with a look of sadness. Sister, she called me timidly. Please don't be angry. I yanked her collar up. Watch your mouth. Celine's eyes immediately welled up with tears. I really didn't say anything. Her pitiful appearance drew a wave of support. Can't even admit what you've done. That's right. Picking on your sister isn't a skill. I was about to retort when Elliot suddenly appeared out of nowhere, his arm that I had broken already healed, affectionately resting on Celine's shoulder. Don't misunderstand everyone, he smiled hypocritically. Livia isn't that kind of person. Celine moved to his embrace, touched, and their gazes were so that it felt like oil could drip out. I felt a surge in my stomach. In my previous life, this pair of dogs and bitches at least pretended to have a few months of pure friendship. But this time they can't even be bothered to pretend. Mission briefing. Cyrus's cold voice suddenly sounded at the door. He didn't even glance at me and walked straight to the conference room. That night, I arrived at the East District warehouse as agreed. Cyrus was checking the weapons, and the moonlight gave his outline a silver edge. Tomorrow's mission is a trap, he said without looking up. Someone is setting us up. I raised an eyebrow. So, play their game. He tossed me a pistol. Find out who's behind this. The next day, as soon as we entered the abandoned hospital, the door behind us automatically locked. Cyrus hurled a lightning ball towards the ventilation duct, but suddenly groaned and fell to his knees. The floor beneath him was electrified. Cyrus, I rushed over, but was stopped by an electrified grid. In my last moment of consciousness, I saw a figure in a white coat emerge from the shadows. When I woke up again, the blinding surgical lights were directly in my eyes. I tried to move, only to find my limbs were all restrained. On the adjacent operating table lay the unconscious Cyrus. Sister, are you awake? Celine's sweet voice came through. She was wearing a white lab coat and playing with a scalpel in her hand. Who exactly are you? I asked hoarsely. She tilted her head and gave a charming smile that my sister would never have. I'm here to complete the mission. I was going to target Cyrus, but he's too difficult, she pouted. Luckily, there's Elliot as a backup. Elliot walked in with several people in protective suits, his greedy gaze sweeping over me. Honey, can we start now? Celine nodded and raised the scalpel. Once I get your crystal cores, I can return to the main god space. She gazed obsessively at the unconscious Cyrus. What a pity, such a perfect man. As the blade tip pressed against my collarbone, the entire operating room suddenly plunged into darkness. A bolt of lightning split the darkness, directly striking Celine's chest. Cyrus had woken up, surrounded by raging currents. He tore off the electrodes on his body, his eyes chilling. Main god space. Celine fell to the ground, her eyes wide with terror. How could you? I've long suspected you're not Celine. I broke free from the restraints, water blades forming in my palm. Now, give my sister back to me. Elliot tried to run when things took a turn for the worse, but Cyrus struck him down with a lightning whip. Celine suddenly burst into maniacal laughter. Too late. The original's consciousness has already been erased. Asterisk. She's gone. She'll never come back. Celine, no. The transmigrator who possessed my sister's body laughed maniacally. Her mouth twisted into an eerie grin. Elliot was shielded behind her, his handsome face smeared with blood, his eyes glinting with cunning. Sister, he dared to call me that. We can make a deal. My water blade trembled in my hand. The scenes from my previous life flashed before my eyes again. It was this face, with a greedy smile, watching my crystal core as I was pinned down on the operating table. Shut up. My voice was hoarse. Not my own. Cyrus stood beside me, lightning dancing at his fingertips, reflecting the scattered bodies on the ground, all old acquaintances from my previous life who had participated in my murder. What is your mission? I stepped forward, my water blade pressing against the throat of the time traveler. Speak. She suddenly gave a sinister smile. I'm here to steal your luck, my lady. She tilted her head, making that expression with my sister's face, which made my stomach churn. You were supposed to be the world's top esper, with all men falling for you, including Cyrus, of course, she added maliciously, her eyes glancing towards the man beside her. He was supposed to adore you to death. Cyrus's expression remained unchanged, but the air suddenly became turbulent with raging thunder elements. What a pity, the traveler continued, her voice growing sharper. Now it's all gone. Your sister's soul was already wiped out by the system. Ha ha. The string in my mind that had been stretched to its limit snapped. The water blade surged instantly, but it stopped just before it could cut her throat, because she said, "Kill me, and this body will die too. Can you bear to lose your sister's body?" My hands were trembling. This was Celine's body, the body of my sister I had protected since childhood. Don't listen to her nonsense, Cyrus suddenly spoke up. The pupils of someone whose soul has been wiped out turn gray. I suddenly looked into the traveler's eyes, which were still Celine's familiar deep brown. She is lying. This realization made me shiver, followed by a surge of savage pleasure. I turned towards Elliot, and the water blade transformed into a slender water whip in his terrified gaze. What are you going to do?" he stammered, scrambling back on all fours. "I can give you the crystal core, I can give you supplies." "Aren't you supposed to conquer him?" I said to the traveler, wrapping the water whip around Elliot's neck. "Unfortunately, your mission is about to fail." The time traveler finally panicked. "Stop, you can't." 3, I began to count down. "Please," she screamed, and this time there was real fear in her voice. "I'm begging you with your sister's body." 2, Elliot's face began to turn purple as he futilely clawed at the water whip around his neck, his legs kicking wildly. 1, the water whip tightened abruptly, accompanied by a crisp crack. Elliot's head tilted at an unnatural angle, his eyes still wide with terror. "Warning, mission target has died." A mechanical voice suddenly sounded from within the traveler. "Host is about to be wiped out. Countdown, 10, 9, 8. The traveler let out a scream unlike that of a human. "No, system, give me another chance. I can still." 3, 2, 1. With the final countdown, the traveler's body jerked violently, then collapsed to the ground like a broken puppet. Cyrus and I held our breath, waiting. 1 minute later, the fingers of that body twitched. "Sis," a faint voice, but it made my eyes instantly well up with tears. It was Celine, the tone that only the real Celine would use, with a slight upward inflection at the end, carrying a hint of coquetry. I knelt down, trembling as I brushed the hair from her forehead. The light in her eyes finally became what I was familiar with, clear, warm, looking at me with the same dependence as when I was a child. I had a terrible nightmare, Celine said weakly, tears streaming down her cheeks. "In the dream, I became someone else, watching myself hurt you and being powerless to stop it." I held her tightly in my arms, feeling her real heartbeat and warmth. Cyrus silently stepped out of the door, giving us some private space. "It's all over." I stroked my sister's hair, my voice choked. "Welcome back, Celine." Outside the window, the sunset of the apocalypse stained half the sky red. But now, I have finally found the most important part of my life. Story 2. In a previous life, the apocalypse arrived with scorching rains and extreme heat. I kindly took in my best friend and his girlfriend. Unexpectedly, they had already conspired together, not only taking over my house and supplies but also murdering me. Reborn before the apocalypse, I am determined to make them pay dearly for their deeds. 1. Toby. "Bruce, you two will not die a good death," I shouted angrily, suddenly sitting up in bed. A deep, bone-chilling pain made me shudder uncontrollably. However, upon seeing my surroundings clearly, I was stunned. Wasn't this my villa before the apocalypse? What's going on? Wasn't I killed by Toby and Bruce, that treacherous couple, to satisfy their twisted pleasures? They not only carved 108 pieces of flesh from me while I was still alive but also dismembered my beloved dog Jojo right in front of me. Finally, fearing that my body would rot and stink in the heat, they threw me onto the street, leaving my remains to be torn apart by stray dogs. Confused, I picked up my phone and checked the date, June 20th, 2030, 15 days before the catastrophic storms. Trembling, I pinched myself. The pain confirmed it. I had been reborn, but now was not the time for excitement. I quickly calmed down. Knowing the apocalypse was coming in 15 days, I needed to prepare in advance, and there were Toby and Bruce. That despicable duo, I was determined to make them pay. Jojo, seeing me awake, pounced on me and affectionately nuzzled my knee. Seeing Jojo alive again brought tears to my eyes. I had adopted Jojo when I was 13, the year my mother passed away. Having been with me for 10 years, Jojo is like family, which is why I was so furious seeing Toby mistreat him. "Jojo, rest assured, I will make them pay," I said grimly. Jojo didn't understand but comfortingly licked the back of my hand. Just then, my phone suddenly rang. I picked it up. It was labeled wife. It was Toby. I answered the call expressionlessly, hearing Toby's arrogant voice. Bruno, I'm at the Chanel store near the school. I found a bag I like. You have 10 minutes to get here. Without waiting for a response, Toby hung up. Hearing her commanding tone, I clenched my phone tightly. Toby was always like this in my past life. Despite my deep affection, she remained indifferent, always speaking to me with a condescending attitude, as if being with someone like me, a wealthy heir, was beneath her. But everyone at school knew Toby's family was less than ordinary. Her father had suffered a stroke and couldn't take care of himself. Her mother was haughty but incompetent. If not for me covering her tuition, she wouldn't have been able to afford university. Thinking of how subservient she was to Bruce in my past life, I realized she wasn't proud, just despicable, gravitating towards those who treated her poorly. I turned off my phone and left the villa. First, I went to the bank to check my assets. In addition to the 20 million in assets left to me by my mother, I also hold a 10% stake in my grandfather's company, which could fetch an additional 30 million if liquidated. After some thought, I decided to call my eldest uncle directly. Upon hearing my request, he immediately rushed over without delay. Upon seeing me, he still couldn't believe it and asked, "Nephew, are you really going to sell all your shares?" I nodded and pulled out the printed contract. "If you want to buy them, just sign here. If not, I'll ask my second uncle. I'll take them." As soon as he heard that I might sell to my second uncle, he made an instant decision and started making calls to gather funds. After signing the contract, my uncle chuckled and said, "Nephew, you're smart to convert your shares into cash to enjoy life sooner rather than later, unlike your mother who was too stubborn. Look, she passed away so early without enjoying any of life's pleasures." Looking at the string of zeros in the text message, I too smiled. "Yes, uncle, you're right. In my previous life, I accidentally found out that someone was behind my mother's car accident, and my uncle was involved. This time, by selling my shares to him, he has given me all his available funds. When the apocalypse comes, he won't even be able to buy supplies. Uncle, just wait and enjoy your blessings." With ample funds in hand, I immediately contacted a security company and took their manager to another villa of mine. This villa is located in a more secluded area, halfway up a hill, and not many people live nearby, so I hardly ever come here. However, such a location is exactly what's needed for the end times. I want electric fences installed all around, explosion-proof doors and windows, and also some traps set up around the perimeter. I shared my ideas with the manager, who was very professional and didn't look at me as if I were crazy, probably used to dealing with wealthy individuals with time on their hands. After I finished, the manager nodded. "Mr. Bruno, I understand your requirements and we can definitely meet them. However, it will take 10 days to complete, and we need a 200,000 deposit up front." 10 days, that's too slow. I need it done in 5 days. "And I'll pay double the fee if you can make it happen." Hearing this, the manager hesitated. "Mr. Bruno, it's not that we don't. Triple the fee." "All right, I guarantee we'll complete the task within 5 days," the manager exclaimed excitedly. After sorting out the villa's security, the next step was to stock up on supplies. In my previous life, I had some supplies, but those were mostly instant and snack foods I had stocked up on because I was a homebody. Even so, those supplies had helped me survive quite some time with that unfaithful couple. Thinking of Toby, I turned on my phone, and immediately, a flood of messages and missed calls came pouring in. "Bruno, where have you disappeared to? Why aren't you here yet? Bruno, have you grown bold enough to ignore my calls? Bruno, do you want to break up? Fine, you've pushed me to this, let's break up." Seeing that I hadn't replied, Toby's tone eventually softened. "Bruno, why are you suddenly treating me like this? You owe me an explanation. Is something wrong? If it's about the bag, I won't buy it for now. Just reply to my message." In between, there were some messages from Bruce. "Dude, what's going on? Why did you turn off your phone? I heard from Toby that you stood her up. Are you guys having a conflict? Women need to be cajoled, especially a beauty like Toby. Don't be so stingy. Just apologize and that'll be the end of it. You're rich. Just buy her whatever she wants." Seeing Bruce's message, I smirked dismissively. In my past life, I was foolish not to see how close these two were. With that thought, I directly called Bruce. "Bruce, I've run into some trouble, and my phone died. Toby is definitely mad at me, but I'm tied up at the moment. Could you go and console Toby for me?" As soon as the call connected, I hurriedly conveyed this to Bruce. Bruce initially wanted to scold me on behalf of Toby, but after hearing my plea, He swallowed his words and reluctantly responded, "So that's the case, alright then, I'll do it just because of our friendship, but dude, you need to handle your side quickly. Soothing your girlfriend is what you, as the official boyfriend, should be doing." I pretended to be grateful. "Bruce, you're a true friend. Here's what, I'll transfer 50,000 yuan to you too, so you can take Toby out shopping. In the coming days, some unusual events were going to occur. And to prevent them from noticing anything odd, they needed to be distracted in amusement. Amusements are great at shifting attention." Sure enough, upon hearing about the money, Bruce's tone lightened significantly. "Sure, buddy, you can count on me. I'll make sure Toby cools off." After hanging up, I went straight to the city's largest supermarket. Using the pretext of donating supplies to impoverished mountain areas, I requested a lot of food. Instant foods, snacks, and beverages were my first choice as they are convenient. They serve as a distraction during idle moments, so I ordered 2 large trucks full. I also requested 100 portions each of rice, flour, and oil, and 50 portions each of soy sauce, vinegar, and other seasonings. For personal hygiene products like face wash, toothpaste, toothbrushes, shampoo, body wash, and toilet paper, which are consumed quickly, I ordered 200 sets. Oh, and I also got 100 portions each of dog food and canned food for Jojo. I walked around the supermarket, stopping here and there. The manager of the supermarket nearby kept taking notes with a pen and paper as I shopped. After I finished shopping, the total came to about 100,000 yuan. I paid the bill and asked the manager to deliver everything directly to my villa. Then I went up to the 3rd floor to the clothing section. Despite the forecast of high temperatures and heavy rain, clothes were still a necessity. I went straight to the store where I usually shop and started a major shopping spree. I bought 100 sets each of t-shirts, shorts, underwear, shoes, and socks, all according to my previous preferences. The clothes were comfortable and of undeniable quality, although pricey. They were durable, having died early in my previous life. I didn't know when the heat would end, so it seemed wise to prepare more, just in case. I also picked out some thicker jackets and cotton clothes, to not be caught off guard should the temperature suddenly drop. The sales associate, a sweet and gentle girl, was familiar with me from previous visits. Seeing how much I was buying, she didn't ask too many questions, only mentioning that the store didn't have enough stock currently and needed to transfer some from other stores. She assured me the clothes would be delivered within 2 days. I didn't mind, paid, and gave her the address to deliver the clothes directly, to which she cheerfully agreed. Afterward, I went to an electronics store and bought 5 large-capacity freezers and about 10 air conditioners and fans. The villa already had other appliances, but just to be safe, I bought some more. After paying and arranging for the store to deliver everything to the villa, I went to buy a few high-power solar panels. After the apocalypse began, electricity and network services gradually failed, and I relied on these solar panels to power the appliances and cooling units I bought. Just as I was about to buy some medicinal herbs, my phone suddenly vibrated. I checked it and saw it was a notification from the surveillance system of my previous villa, alerting me that someone had entered. I opened the living room camera feed and saw that it was Toby and Bruce who had entered. Toby knew my home's security code, and they must have thought I was not home, so they decided to sneak in for some mischief. I guess right. As soon as they entered, Bruce and Toby couldn't wait and started kissing each other. They were so eager that they didn't even make it to the bedroom and just did it right there in the living room. Toby, who usually ignored me, didn't know that I had installed surveillance in the villa. Watching their desperate actions, I felt disgusted. In my past life, I had been this woman's lapdog for years. Thinking about it now, I felt like slapping myself, but now that I knew, I couldn't just do nothing. Thinking this, a mischievous smile curled up on my lips, and I picked up my phone and dialed Bruce's number. The phone rang several times before our flustered Bruce picked up. "What's up, Bruno?" Bruce tried to sound calm as he spoke. I responded in a listless tone, "Nothing much. Just wanted to ask if Toby has calmed down. I just finished up with some things and was thinking of heading back to the villa to catch some sleep." Hearing this, Bruce obviously panicked. "What, you're heading back to the villa now?" "Sure, I'm already on the way and will be there soon." "All right, you take care, I've got some things to handle, so I'm going to hang up now." After saying that, Bruce hurriedly ended the call. I switched the surveillance back on. Inside the villa, the 2 people, previously undressed, were now hurriedly putting on their clothes, cursing under their breath as they did so. "Damn Bruno, of all times to show up, he has to come now. Really kills the mood." "Yeah, Bruce, I'm all soft now, maybe we can leave a bit later." As Toby spoke, he rested limply against Bruce. However, Bruce roughly pushed Toby away. "Are you crazy? Bruno will be back any minute now. If he sees us, do you still think you can milk money from him?" Hearing Bruce's words, Toby's lips pouted slightly. But he didn't say anything more and just quietly dressed himself. Watching the two leave the villa, I disinterestedly turned off my phone and headed straight to the pharmacy. However, due to limited stock at the pharmacy and the complicated process of purchasing some medicines, I managed to get only a few. Luckily, I knew a wealthy friend whose family was in the pharmaceutical business. After hearing my request, he readily agreed to supply me with a batch of medicines. With this batch secured, I felt somewhat reassured. In my previous life, many viruses spread through water during the high temperatures and heavy rains, making them hard to guard against. Now, with this medicine, even if I contract some common illnesses, I can largely manage them. After getting the medicines, I went directly to the villa on the hillside. During this time, Bruce called me. Upon learning that I hadn't returned to the villa due to some urgent matters, he gritted his teeth and muttered a curse under his breath. The worse his mood, the happier I felt. Suddenly, a new plan came to mind. Bruce, I'm sorry for the trouble, but you're such a good brother. Once Toby and I get married, I'll definitely give you a big red envelope. Hearing the promise of money, Bruce's mood improved a lot. Bro, don't be like that. We're so close, no need for formalities. I'm just looking forward to your wedding with Toby, but I've been really busy lately. I changed the tone slightly, sounding a bit regretful. I had arranged a yacht thinking to spend a few days at sea with Toby, but unfortunately, that won't be possible now. After hearing this, Bruce paused momentarily, his tone slightly excited. Oh, that's really a shame. Not long after hanging up, Toby called me, possibly in a better mood, and her tone was much cheerier. Bruno, I heard you were planning to take me to the sea. Since you can't go, let me go with my best friend instead. You know her, Li Ting, what a best friend indeed. I continued with my eager tone. Sure, Toby, I've prepared everything on the yacht. You and your bestie should have a blast. Yeah, Bruno, you're the best. Toby rarely complimented me, and it almost made me vomit last night's dinner. I sent the yacht's location to Toby, and not long after, the yacht manager informed me that Toby did indeed board with a man. To ensure they had fun, they even had all the other people on the yacht leave. Great, this pair didn't disappoint me indeed. I looked at the manager. Is the gasoline ready? The manager nodded. As per your instructions, only half was added. It definitely won't be enough for a return trip if they go too far. Good, I responded, feeling a sense of anticipation. I'm curious to see how they'll handle themselves if they encounter a sudden storm at sea, with nowhere to turn for help. After dealing with those two, I felt great. Looking at the villa's courtyard, I made a spontaneous decision to call a construction crew to drill a well there because I was concerned about the drinking water supply. I initially wanted to store some clean drinking water, but I knew it would eventually run out, and with the ongoing stormy weather, it was unclear when it would end. I wouldn't feel secure without a large water reserve. Once the construction crew arrived, they conducted a thorough survey of the yard and indeed found a suitable spot for the well. Then, I utilized my financial capability, and the crew promised to get the well done in one day. While the well was being drilled, I went out and bought 2 water purifiers. Later, I could connect the well directly to the villa, and install the purifiers at the outlets. While purchasing the purifiers, I also bought 3 large water storage tanks to place on the roof of the villa, solving personal hygiene issues like flushing toilets and taking showers. Later, I checked for any other issues and addressed them one by one. By the time I had everything sorted, it was July 3rd, just 2 days before the apocalypse was supposed to start. For the next 2 days, just to be safe, I decided not to go out. Following the instructions from the security company, I turned on the villa's external security systems, cut off the house's electricity, and tested the solar panels. Since I had installed explosion-proof glass around the solar panels, even a severe storm wouldn't affect them. The solar panels worked quickly, charging up in no time, and soon, all the appliances in the villa were running. Seeing everything was in order, I turned the power back on and quietly awaited the apocalypse. Out of boredom, I checked the yacht's surveillance camera. At that moment, the yacht was quietly stationary on the sea. Toby, dressed lightly, was sitting in Bruce's arms with a glass of red wine, surrounded by numerous wine bottles and snacks. Bruce held Toby leisurely, enjoying the sea breeze. Hey, this life, it's not even human, it's divine, Bruce remarked while roughly handling Toby. Toby's hand trembled slightly with the wine glass, and his voice became sultry. Bruce, be gentle. As they were about to start again, I turned off the camera in disgust. I had only prepared 5 days' worth of food for them. I've been playing tutu for 4 days now and I imagine they're planning to return tomorrow. However, tomorrow marks the official beginning of the apocalypse. I'm really looking forward to seeing their faces when they realize they can't come back. I've opened a bottle of red wine and am quietly standing by the window, glass in hand, outside. All remains peaceful. Little do they know This is just the calm before the storm. Last night, I had a restless sleep, filled with visions of my past life, the humiliation of being flayed alive just before dying, the tragic death of Jojo, and the grotesque, disgusting faces of Bruce and Toby jolted me awake. I glanced at my watch. It was already 6 in the morning, and the sky outside was still a dreary gray, sweating from the nightmare. I took a shower first. By the time I finished, it had started to drizzle outside. It's often rainy in the summer, so initially, nobody paid much attention to the light rain. In my past life, as the light rain turned into a downpour and temperatures rose unnaturally, people began to realize something was wrong with the weather. Eventually, the lack of water and power caught everyone off guard. The sound of rain grew louder. I checked my phone and saw that people online were starting to notice the anomalies. It's weird. With such heavy rain, it should be cooler. But why is the temperature rising? This rain isn't normal. Wasn't the forecast just for light rain? This looks like a storm. Yeah, and who knows when it will stop? How am I supposed to go to work? Take a day off, buddy. It doesn't look like it's stopping anytime soon, and it's too dangerous to be out. Don't worry. It's not a big deal. I've already started delivering food. It's just hot. But hey, the delivery fees are high with this weather. A delivery rider posted a photo. The streets were already flooded, and a middle-aged man in a yellow cap happily gestured a yeah to the camera. Seeing this, I felt a twinge of emotion. Life isn't easy for anyone. I thought for a moment and then posted a comment. This weather is not normal. Everyone should try to stock up on non-perishable food and water. That was all I could remind them. Once my comment was posted, it immediately drew more responses. Good point. I've just run out of supplies at home. I need to go shopping. I've run out too, but it's so hot outside. I really don't feel like going out. Don't panic, everyone. The problem isn't big. The rain just looks fierce. But the clouds aren't that thick. It should stop soon. Exactly. Let's not cause a panic. If we all rush out, those greedy businesses will definitely jack up the prices. We can't fall for that. Seeing those who were being overly optimistic, I shook my head in resignation. Then turned off my phone and headed to the basement. The basement was cooler than upstairs, so I moved all the freezers to the basement. I opened a can of food for Jojo and heated up a bowl of lean meat porridge for myself, and enjoyed some steamed dumplings. After eating, I comfortably nestled on the sofa and turned on the yacht surveillance. At that moment, the couple that had been sweet earlier were now furiously arguing, losing all composure. It's all because of you. Insisting on this sea outing. Now look, we can't even return. Bruce complained to Toby. Toby retorted with equal intensity, how can you pin all the blame on me? Didn't you enjoy it too? And who is it that boasted about knowing how to operate a yacht, without even checking if there was enough fuel beforehand? Bruce's face stiffened as he irritably ran his fingers through his hair. Enough, let's think about how we can get back. The rain is getting heavier, and it's too dangerous to stay here. Hearing Bruce's pragmatic approach, Toby stopped arguing and thought for a moment. Maybe we should call Bruno. He'll find a way to get us back. Are you crazy? If he finds out we've been together at sea these past few days, what will he think? Men understand each other best. If I were to find out he and Toby had been alone at sea for so long. Even as a loyal admirer, I couldn't guarantee I wouldn't have thoughts. Toby was nonchalant. What's the big deal? We've spent time together before, and has Bruno ever figured it out? He adores me so much, he wouldn't want me to suffer here. Toby was very confident in her charm, and this confidence indeed influenced Bruce. Now, with the relentless downpour and dwindling food supplies, the rising heat was becoming unbearable for him. Shall we try calling him then? Toby smiled triumphantly and then dialed my number. Watching the incoming call on my phone, I immediately hung up. Toby's confident expression faltered momentarily upon seeing the call disconnected. Bruno must be busy. She excused herself, then repeatedly dialed my number until I leisurely answered. Hello, Bruno. What were you doing that you couldn't answer my call? As soon as the call connected, Toby's complaining voice came through, seemingly oblivious to her predicament. Oh, Toby. I was just enjoying a great meal and didn't hear the phone. What's up? Hearing about my meal. I could distinctly hear her swallowing her saliva over the phone. You're relaxed. While I'm stuck at sea, hurry and send someone to rescue me. The rain is getting worse, and I'm afraid it might become dangerous. Still maintaining her superior attitude. Hearing this, I scoffed. Oh, got too caught up with Bruce and now you remember your backup plan. Taken aback by my words, Toby instinctively retorted, Bruno, what are you talking about? Bruce and I are just friends. How could you accuse me like this? I might as well be dead. Fine, then go die. My indifferent tone left Toby unable to continue the conversation. Seeing this, Bruce took over the phone. Bro, are you misunderstanding something? Isn't it you who asked me to accompany Toby? I was just trying to help you, and you can't just throw dirt on me and besides, Bruce changed his tone. Now is not the time to talk about this. The weather is getting worse. Hurry up and find someone to rescue us. We can explain everything face to face. These two really took me for a fool if I didn't call them out on it. I didn't bother with more idle chat. I hung up the phone and sent over a video of their shenanigans. Soon, Bruce called again, this time sounding a bit panicked. Brother, it was my fault. I had too much to drink and couldn't control myself. No one is perfect, right? Please forgive me this once, let's get us back, and I'll apologize in person. Hearing Bruce's insincere apology, I lamented my own naivety. Perhaps it was my previous easygoing nature that made them think they could easily fool me. Alright, since you want to apologize, show me your sincerity first. With that, I ignored Bruce's pleas and hung up the phone. Then, I stopped paying attention to them and walked over to the window. Outside, the rain was still pouring heavily. I checked my phone and saw that it had already caused panic outside. My God, when will this rain stop? We're running out of food at home. Help, I live on the second floor and the water has already flooded the first floor. My house is about to be submerged. Comrades, don't go out. I just saw someone who went out and sank after swimming for a bit in the water, and they haven't resurfaced yet. Looks like they're gone. My goodness. That's terrifying. I better just stay put at home. Everyone, stay calm and stay at home. I trust the government won't abandon us. Reading these comments, I remembered from my past life that initially, the government was actively rescuing people, but as more areas needed help, they couldn't keep up. After thinking for a bit, I typed a few more comments. In 2 days, the rain will stop for a day. Everyone can use this chance to gather some supplies and move to higher ground because the rain will continue afterward. My comment immediately caught a lot of attention. Is it true that the rain will really stop? Man, are you saying that the rain will continue afterward? How do you know? Don't be fooling people at a time like this. Who can predict the future? Better to believe it than not. If the rain really stops, I'll take my wife and kids to my mother-in-law's house. They live up on the mountain. That should be high enough. Lucky I live in a high-rise. Just running out of food. I need to stock up more. Some believed, some didn't. I didn't explain much. Speaking too much sometimes leads to unnecessary complications. The reason why I remember that particular day so clearly is because that was when Bruce and Toby approached me. They were out of water and food and decided to take advantage of my easygoing nature. At the time, being a good buddy and somewhat of a pushover, I didn't even question why they just happened to be together. It was only after they tied me up that I learned they had been having an affair when the apocalypse started. With temperatures soaring at the onset of the apocalypse, Toby remembered my habit of storing food, so they plotted and came to me. Ding. Just then, Bruce sent me a video message. In the video, Bruce and Toby stood face to face, slapping each other repeatedly while saying, "Sorry, we were wrong. Sorry, we were wrong." Seeing this video, I was momentarily stunned. I hadn't expected them to resort to this method, but seeing their swollen faces did indeed give me some satisfaction. I felt a surge of pleasure. I sent them a message. All right, that shows some sincerity, but it's not enough. However, I'm in a good mood right now, so I'll tell you that there's food hidden under the third deck of the yacht. You might want to check there. Upon seeing my message, Bruce and Toby, despite the heavy rain, ran out like madmen and found the compressed biscuits I had placed under the deck. Starved, they devoured them immediately. Compressed biscuits are quite filling, and after eating, they were satisfied and belched contentedly. I snickered as I watched the scene on the surveillance camera. Actually, if they had eaten sparingly, the biscuits would have lasted for 2 days, but they assumed I would rescue them, so they didn't bother conserving resources. But I never intended to help them from the start, and I didn't provide any water. Thirst is harder to endure than hunger. Soon, 2 days passed, the storm finally stopped. During these 2 days, I spent my time playing happily with Jojo in the house, enjoying food and drink in a comfortable temperature, living quite contentedly. Meanwhile, Bruce and Toby kept trying to find ways to beg for my forgiveness. Over these 2 days, they either fought or cursed each other, almost breaking each other apart, but this was far from the 108 torturous cuts I felt I had endured. Bruno, my good brother, my good friend, you are generous. Please let us go. The rain has stopped today. It's a good time for someone to pick us up. In the video, Bruce was kneeling on the ground, continuously bowing his head and begging me. Bruno, I was wrong. When I get back, I will be obedient. Follow you, we can get married. I'll bear you a bunch of kids. I'll do anything you ask. Can you please take me away? I can't stand being in this godforsaken place any longer. Toby had lost her usual arrogance, her face bruised and battered, coupled with her chapped lips from dehydration. She looked a complete mess, a far cry from the campus beauty she once was. Seeing the two of them in such a state made me feel surprisingly good. I casually sent over the freshly opened red wine and steak. High temperatures go even better with red wine. Upon seeing the food, Bruce and Toby's eyes gleamed with a desperate light. They wanted to swallow, but the continuous lack of water made it impossible for them to even produce saliva. Bitch, you this bitch. Suddenly, Bruce's expression turned manic, and he lunged at Toby like a madman. It's all your fault, making it impossible for me to return. I'm going to kill you. The scene turned bloody, and I couldn't bear to watch anymore. I simply turned off the monitor. Arf. Jojo came over with his toy ball, and I took it from him, starting to play around with him in the villa. Days passed, and as expected, the torrential rains continued non-stop. When I had a moment, I checked the yacht's surveillance. Toby was dead, her body mutilated and many of her internal organs missing, revealing stark white bones. Her body was dry, as if all her blood had been drained. As for Bruce, he also seemed lifeless. Sitting motionlessly beside Toby, on closer inspection, you could see his left eye was dark and empty. The missing eyeball was held in Toby's hand. Due to the high temperature, maggots were incessantly crawling in and out of his eye socket. Watching this gruesome scene, I sighed deeply, finally feeling a sense of closure from the ordeals of my past life. Having avenged myself, I lived even more leisurely in the villa. In the following period, similar to my previous life, there was no water, no electricity, and finally, no internet. I lost all contact with the outside world. Fortunately, I was well prepared and not worried at all. 3 months passed like this, and one morning, the torrential rain suddenly stopped. The temperature also gradually dropped. In my past life, I hadn't lived this long and didn't know if the weather would warm again, so I dared not act rashly and stayed in the villa. A week later, the temperature still hadn't changed, and the internet was back to normal. I turned on my phone, and it was filled with the jubilations of survivors. The rain has stopped, and the temperature is back to normal. I survived. Woo-woo, Mom, the disaster is over. Can you see it? I miss you so much. Thank you, our country. We are finally saved. And the nation also issued a statement. The disaster is over. The nation will not give up on any life. Rest assured, we are actively organizing rescue. Seeing all this, I finally confirmed that the high temperature and torrential rain apocalypse had passed. I excitedly opened the villa's big door, greedily breathing in the fresh air outside. Looking up, the sun hung in the azure sky, a few leisurely white clouds drifted by, and a gentle breeze brushed against my face. Woof, Jojo excitedly ran around, and I blissfully closed my eyes. It's wonderful, both I and this land have been reborn.